Joining us also, Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform. And I jokingly said, have you been blamed for sequestration yet? And he goes, I hope.
Absolutely. Sequestration is the first progress we've had in some time.
And then we've seen finally, after we've complained about Democrats in the Senate not producing a budget in over 1,400 days,
Yep.
they finally produced a budget, but we see $1 trillion in new tax increases.
It's been 1,415 days.
Ooh, I'm 15 off.
Yes, since they did a budget, and they still get paid during all that time. And the only reason they're doing a budget now is because the Republicans got that law passed that says the senators wouldn't get paid if they didn't at least pretend to write one. Now, when you say there's $1 trillion in tax increase, keep in mind, that's what they're saying ahead of the budget coming out. When you hear that they're going to cut some spending, I'll bet you a nickel that a lot of the spending cuts that they're counting are actually tax increases, because they often confuse those two things. And their view, if they raise taxes, the government has more money. It's just as good as a spending cut.
Right. And of course, all of the entitlement spending they want to keep protecting. Of course, they call that their domestic priorities. They want to protect that entitlement spending. They don't want to touch that. We see the $1 trillion in new in new revenue, which, code for tax increase.
Yeah, and you were talking about Mini-Me out of South Carolina and his effort to have negotiations with the president to raise taxes in return for entitlement reform. And I've had long conversations with the senator where he says, well, if I got jillions in entitlement reform, I'd be willing to give them a little in taxes.
Right.
And I said, Senator, nobody's going to do that for you. And while the president sometimes flirts with pretending that maybe he'd think about doing that, the Democrats in the Senate, the front page of the Washington Post today, the Democrats in the Senate said, we're never doing anything on entitlements. So this hypothetical, imaginary budget deal where the Democrats cut entitlements and the Republicans slash their wrists and raise taxes is never going to happen, because even if the president pretended to be for it, the Democrats in the Senate have made it clear they'll do nothing of the sort.
And then the budget, of course, that Congressman Paul Ryan was being slammed for, because the key factor of it being the repeal of Obamacare.
Yeah.
Chris Wallace had asked him Sunday morning. He told him, not asked him. He said, well, this isn't going to pass. And Paul Ryan said, well, we think it should. I still think that they need to keep trying to do it as often as possible and make the left own this.
Well, I think it's very interesting that the modern Republican Party has twice put the Ryan budget plan, which goes to balance, actually pays down the debt in out years, doesn't raise taxes. Their budget balances without raising taxes. The Democrat budget raises taxes and never balances. And the Democrat budget actually is make-believe. The Republican budget is thought through. It's scored. I think running for Congress or the Senate with the Ryan plan next to you is a much stronger position than the one the D's have to run on, which is vote for us and later we'll tell you what that means.
Right.
And since the last time they had an election, the secret sauce was $800 billion of stimulus, and the surprise was a 3,000-page health care bill. And they keep pulling stuff out like rabbits out of a hat. They go, oh, you bought this too, and you agreed to this. No, we didn't. The Republicans are actually running on a plan that's written down. Great moral authority flows from that.
Exactly. Well, they held the line so far. They didn't give Democrats everything that they wanted. Democrats keep saying we need more. Boehner said, well, you got your tax increases in January. If they can just continue to hold this line a little bit longer, I think they'll really save a lot of face in midterms, because ultimately that's the goal for the left.
Yes, the left has to win the House or they'll explode.
And we can't remind people enough how dangerous that would be.
The last 2 years of the Obama administration would look like the first 2 years minus any sense of accountability to the future. So in the first 2 years, Obama wasted a lot of money, passed a big entitlement program, government-run health care, nationalized the banks, and those sorts, and spent a lot of money. But he was always a little bit worried about going too far for 2010, 2012. If he gets the House to go with the Senate, there is nothing that he won't do in the last 2 years. That's why winning the House, keeping the House, and winning the Senate begins to turn things around.
Terrifying proposition. Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform, thank you for forcing them to hold the line here. We appreciate it.
It's
good to see you. It's good to see you.
you.
Take care. Thanks so much.